Greetings. Today we'll talk about Chapter C. Chapter C is titled Tonality, Scales and Keys. And so I think it's first good to give you some definitions of these terms. This course, and in fact the next 2 semesters of music theory after this, are largely geared towards teaching you about Western tonality, the tonal music system that evolved in Western Europe and then spread to North America. Other types of music, music from other cultures, have their own systems of tonalities and scales that are equally deep and interesting, but this is not an ethnomusicology class. This is a class to teach you about the classical music of the Western and European tradition. And much of what we say will also be true of popular music in the 20th century. So let's start with the term tonality. Tonality is a system that organizes both melody and harmony, and it involves the use of keys and scales. So music that is tonal music, is music that is in a particular key. And for the most part, we'll be talking about major and minor keys. There are other scales and other keys that are mentioned in Chapter C, but those are much less important, and for the sake of time, we're just going to skip over them. Tonal music has a couple of different properties. First of all, a tonal piece uses a particular set of notes, 7 notes usually, that can be organized into a scale. So when you learn about the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or the minor scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do. What you're learning is the basic alphabet from which musical words and phrases can be constructed. But tonality is more than just a list of notes that are ingredients for music. Tonality implies a fairly complicated system of organization and hierarchy among the notes. In fact, this system of organization and hierarchy is so nuanced and so complicated that we'll be studying different aspects of it for the next 3 semesters. I've written 2, I hope, familiar melodies up on the board for you. The first one is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Let me sing this for you. Do, do, sol, sol, la, la, sol, fa, fa, mi, mi, re, re, do. You'll see that I've marked in certain scale degrees. We can either use the solfege syllables that you've covered in your sight singing and ear training class to refer to the notes of a scale, or we can use numbers. So the note that we start the scale on is scale degree 1, and we go all the way up through scale degree 7, and then the last note of the scale we can call either scale degree 1 or scale degree 8. Okay, and the reason that I've marked in scale degree 1 and scale degree 5 in the places that they occur in this song is because they're the most important notes of the scale, and consequently, because this melody uses the C major scale, they are also the most important notes of this melody. Scale degree 1 is called the tonic. We could also think of it as the keynote or the tonal center of the piece. It's the home base, and this particular phrase comes back to rest on the tonic, on scale degree 1, and that makes it sound rather final. If we ended on a different note, like scale degree 2 or scale degree 3, we might have a good sense of the music pausing, but it wouldn't sound like it could be over. The second most important note in the scale is scale degree 5, which is also called the dominant note. Notice that the very first 2 different notes that we have are 1 and 5. And this is very common. We often either start on 1 and then immediately go to 5, or we start on 5 and immediately go to 1. For instance, Amazing Grace goes 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, 1. So it starts on 5, 1. Taps starts on 5, 1. Dum, bum, 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 bum. a lot of pieces start 5-1 and a lot of pieces start 1-5. Notice that the places where we have 1 and 5 are often accented beats, and they're often important points of arrival. I would consider this to be 2 phrases, and the first phrase arrives on scale degree 5 and pauses there, and then the second phrase arrives on scale degree 1 and pauses there. Down below this is a second melody. The Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was in the key of C major. This uses a different scale. This is in the key of C minor. The difference is that this melody has E flats instead of E naturals, and it also has a B flat instead of a B natural. It does not have any A in it, but if we did have an A, scale degree 6, it would be A flat. This is God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. 1, 1, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it's a different melody, but it has the same kind of emphasis on scale degrees 1 and 5 that Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star has. Like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, it starts with 1, 5, and then the places where we have scale degree 1 occur on relatively accented beats, beat 3 of measure 2, the downbeat of measure 3, and we end up at the end of this phrase on scale degree 5. One of the ways that you tell what key a melody is in, you could look at the key signature, and hopefully the melody that's written out is following that key signature. But if you don't have a key signature, and if you maybe don't even have all of the notes used in the way that this melody doesn't employ any A or A flat, so you can't tell whether the key would have 2 flats, B flat and E flat, or whether it would have 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat. But you can tell that this is definitely in the key of C minor, not in the key of G minor, because of the emphasis on the C and the G. If we had a melody that was in G minor, we would expect it instead to emphasize G, which is the tonic, and D, which is the dominant of the key of G. I'm going to look at the textbook's example C1 with you. Okay, so this is another Christmas carol, the first Noel. Here's what this sounds like. Mi, re, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, la, ti, do, sol, fa, mi. In this melody, we can, again, see important places where scale degree 1 and scale degree 5 are used. Here's 1, the C. Next downbeat is 5, the G. The next downbeat is 1, the C. And then from there on, we're just going to go back and forth up and down the upper part of the scale from C down to G on the next downbeat, up to C on the next downbeat, down to G, up again to C, and then finally we skip down to G, and then we descend to E. Now, the E is a note that we haven't talked about yet. This is called the mediant note, the 3rd scale degree. It's the mediant because it is in the middle, halfway between the tonic and the dominant. The first Noel starts on the mediant note, and it ends on the mediant note. If we were to select the note in a scale which is maybe the 3rd most important note, it would be that mediant note. And in fact, the tonic, mediant, and dominant notes, in this case, C, E, G, make the tonic triad, the chord whose root is the tonic note. Even though this melody doesn't start on C and doesn't start on G, and it doesn't end on C, nor does it end on G, those beginning and ending points are taken up by the scale degree 3, the mediant note, and 1 and 5 are still important in the interior of the melody. And so it's a good guess that this piece is in the key of C major. You'll be doing a few exercises where you have melodies like this, where you have to think about what key they're in. There may or may not be a key signature, and not all of the notes may be present, but you need to look at the melody holistically, figure out what the most important notes are, what the note is that sounds like a stable key note, and then you'll be asked to give this series of bits of information about the music. What is the tonic note? Write out the tonic triad with scale degrees 1, 3, and 5. Name the range of the melody. And the range of the melody is usually going to be either from do to do, or from sol to sol, or if it's a fairly restricted range, we might have a melody whose range was do to sol, maybe even sol to do. And sometimes the range would go one step on the outside of those notes, but usually we can see that the range is mostly defined by tonic and dominant. Then you would be asked to actually name the key, C major. And here's a word that I haven't really talked to you about yet, mode. The key specifically refers to what the tonic or keynote is. So this music is in the key of C, and the mode is the major mode. And then here is the scale. All of the notes organized in ascending form from the low tonic note up to the high tonic note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looking at the melodies here, we can see that the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star essentially has a range from 1 to 5. There's just one place where we go a little bit outside of the upper boundary. We would think of the A as being a neighbor note to the G, or a neighbor tone. God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, again, is mostly within the range from tonic to dominant. And again, there's just one place that we go a little bit outside of that, which is here, where we go from the C down to the B flat and then up to the C. Again, a neighbor note, a lower neighbor this time. Both of these melodies are in the key of C, but Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star is in C major, and God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen is in C minor. So the key is the same, but the modes are different. Now I've written a new melody on the board. This is the melody Amazing Grace. You probably know this tune. It goes like this. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Think about what key this melody is in, and also think about what mode it is in. It starts on the note G. It ends on the note G. Okay, looking at the notes that are on the downbeats, we have a C, and another C. That's some pretty good information about the melody. The lowest note is a G, and the highest note is a G. And the other beats in the music have on them the notes E, G, and E. But I'm going to put these notes in parentheses because these are not quite as strong metrically as the other notes. We don't have 7 different notes here. We're missing some notes. For instance, there's no F, so we might be unsure whether there would be an F or an F sharp in this piece of music. Also, there's no B, so we don't know whether this melody would use a B or a B flat. We're missing some information as far as what the scale is or what the key signature is. But you've probably figured out by now that this melody is also in the key of C, based on where the strong notes are. Okay, so the notes that I first picked out as being the most significant, the first and the last, the lowest and the highest, the downbeats, these were all C's and G's. And so that pretty much tells us that what we have is music that's in the key of C major, because these notes that are particularly important in the music are scale degrees 1 and 5 of the C major scale. When I looked a little bit closer at it, and I looked at some of the sort of secondary important notes, I found that some of them were the median note, scale degree 3. And that does it for this lecture. Please watch the next lecture, which will talk more specifically about major scales and major keys. Thanks.